And take two. Hey booktube, how you doing? That's super. It is pretty dark in here, I apologize. Except for that fire on the wall over there. But I wanted to do a video that was a response to Steve Donahue's video that said the next generation is poop in Star Trek. And this is a Boldy Govember video. And I also want to state that this is probably the last Boldy Govember video I'm going to do this month. Because we already started decorating for Christmas and rearranging the house. And the only reason why I'm able to do this video is because Zoe and Shaylee realized that we needed more lights. So they left, and it's snowing outside, and they left. And as you can see, they left the door open as well. So, moving right along. I don't know exactly where to start with my response here. But I guess I'll just start at the beginning. Next generation is a camel. Now, if you don't know what that term means, it means like a horse put together by committee. I feel like that's what Next Generation is. I feel like there were too many cooks in the kitchen, and everybody wanted to have their input put in. So you have this ridiculous cast that, for the most part, don't really interact well with one another, I don't think. And you have this very bland bridge, very bland uniforms. To me, everything about the show is bland. I grew up before Next Generation, so I was one of those people who Star Trek was Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and that's Star Trek, and you can't do anything about it. But then I remember when they started talking about the Next Generation, it was a big deal. Like, I remember being really excited about it. I think I even, like, my dad took me to a Star Trek convention right before the show premiered. So it was kind of... It was a big deal, because that was the only time my dad's ever taken me to a Star Trek convention. And, like, lackluster doesn't even, like, begin to express how it was for me. I remember... I watched, like... Okay, here we go. I watched probably, like, the whole first season, and was just, like, every once in a while there would be something kind of cool happening, but it was TOS, so it's not Star Trek. Because that's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at the fact that you had a cast that had such chemistry in the original series. And then you had this, like, awful 100 people on the bridge, no chemistry thing. I don't know. I basically agree with Steve, and some of the things that bothered me were how beige the Enterprise D is on the inside, and shoulder pads. Like, I don't want to say for sure, but I'm pretty sure shoulder pads were already out by the started. And the one thing you could say about TOS was that, like, that was like height of 60s fashion, and everybody just fucking looked cool all the fucking time, and like it was just cool and hot and the whole thing. Next Generation looked like an episode of Designing Women with pajamas, and Steve brought up the pajama thing too, and it was just, it was awful. It was like everyone was in like pantsuits. It was just, ugh, so disgusting. Like, I was just talking to some people about this. I don't look like a fashionista, okay? But I am very picky when it comes to fashion and makeup on other people. I'm such a fucking dick. But, like, I don't know, man. It was just like, how can this look any worse? Like, yeah, the special effects were top-notch compared to TOS, but the relationships on Star Trek and the interactions with people is what made TOS good. You know, it wasn't just that it was like a space show with special effects. I mean, fucking, like, we should be talking about Lost in Space, you know, like, at the same time, if we're just talking about effects and stuff. And, like, I know Star Trek was still better than Lost in Space when it comes to effects and everything like that, but the relationships between the characters is what made that show work. Some of the things that really bum me out is like Yeoman Rand. She only was in like 8 or 9 episodes, and then the network, I guess, decided that her being on the show would cramp Kirk's womanizing style kind of thing, to where they didn't want him to have a love interest. They wanted him to be able to go out and boink every alien that he could. And I don't think that's necessarily how that should have gone, because, like, I feel like Kirk couldn't bang Rand because of his position and her position. So it would have been like this thing where he always wanted to, like, hook up with her and couldn't. So he takes out his frustrations on any chick with green skin. Just kidding. So anyway, like, that's a big... That went all over the place, sorry. Another thing, okay? And this actually... I'm trying to remember dates here. I can't remember if this was already in motion by the time Next Generation came out, or if this was something that the films pushed because of what was going on in Next Generation. But this is where you find out way too much about me. My father was a Klingon, okay? He had the whole getup and the weapons and the bumpy forehead, and he would go to conventions, and he was basically a Klingon cosplayer. Now, my dad was also part of a ship, a bird of prey vessel, and their story was that they were frozen in time or some shit. Like they were in a fight with the Federation and got blown out of space and like was just spiraling through space and everyone was unconscious. When everyone woke up, it was hundreds of years later and there was a truce between the Klingons and the Federation, and their ship didn't want there to be. So they did not adhere to the truce. So, like, like, I can't remember what my dad's position on the ship was, but he was in charge of, like, writing their history and all this other shit. And there were a ton of other people in this group. And when they would go to conventions, like, it wouldn't be them going to a convention. It would be them on their ship or them at a space station, and they would find, like, Federation cosplayers and, like, try to fight them or arrest them or something. It was, like, bonkers crazy. And if I could find any of those pictures of my dad all decked out, I will show them. So basically, I think what's happening is that the video's choppy, but the audio's recording. At least in the playback I watched. So maybe it's fine all around. I don't know. But anyway, so one of the things that my dad just hammered home into me, like there was no way around it, is that the Klingons and the Federation should never. It's like against the Klingon way to want to have a treaty with the Federation and all this other shit. And he would just bitch and bitch and bitch and yell about it, like whenever it would come up. Like when you're raised hearing that kind of stuff over and over again, that's always in the back of your head. It's kind of like those people who like grew up with like Republican parents, I guess. If there's just constant like blah 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 blah, it's hard to shake that as you get older, unless you just want to like hate your parents or whatever. Anyway, so that was another thing for me. And like I understand Worf's whole thing. And actually, there are times when Worf is like probably one of the most interesting characters on the show. But he's surrounded by so many horrible characters on the show, and he's surrounded by so many horrific costumes that like it's hard to like watch. And sometimes his hair just makes me want to like lose my shit. But that's me. Now, another thing, and I remember talking about this like when I first started my channel, and I can't remember who it was. It might have been James, but somebody, no one like argued with me, but they tried to point it out to me and like explain it to me. So I'm wanting explanations again, because as I watched Next Generation, I would come in and out of it. So like, it's so good. And what I've been doing since I read Log 1 and I finished Star Trek 3 was I've been picking through these James Bliss. Hello. My videos are stopping recording after a certain amount of time. So since this video is kind of long, I'm just gonna wrap it up. I talked for like another 15 minutes about shit, and I can't do this. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed Boldly Govember. I did. I really had a good time. And hopefully we could do something like this again really soon.